now. Thank you so much for being with us, both of you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Mr. O'Toole, I'll start with you. We just spoke with Minister Baines a few minutes ago, and he appeared to be open to the idea of some federal money through an innovation fund, I guess he mentioned, going towards remodeling this plant so as to accommodate the kinds of cars that GM says it now wants to manufacture. Do you think this is something federal money should go towards? What do you think of that idea?
Well, look, it's growing up, my dad worked at GM. It impacts our family, and I want to say I'm thinking of them. We've said today that we're prepared to work with the government on a solution to make Oshawa a competitive jurisdiction. The minister, you were asking him questions, seemed to want to just respond to ideas from GM, but I think we can be proactive, and it's not just the Auto Innovation Fund, which they've renamed. I think some of their concerns on trade, some of the concerns on tariffs, perhaps if we could address competitive issues, we could show that Oshawa needs to be part of GM's future. I don't think we give up on one day. It came as a shock, but the shock should lead us to come up with solutions, and I think we're willing to work with them on that to make sure that these jobs are preserved, and the signal to manufacturing in Ontario, which right now is a bad one, doesn't ripple into other layoffs.
Ms. Matheson, do you think the government should be doing all that it can to keep this plant open, and what specifically would that entail?
Well, obviously, this government has a great deal of work to do because we're talking about the lives of 2,500 families and the future of this community. It seems to me, in watching that interview with Minister Baines, he talked a great deal about the door being open and taxpayers' money being shoveled out. It also seems to me that $10.5 billion in 2009 should have bought a great deal more than just a promise to 2016. I want to know what the strings were in terms of that. I want to know what questions were asked of the company, and I want to know exactly what kind of dialogue went on. Yes, he talked to the company. Did he talk to the union? Did he talk to the workers? Right now, there needs to be a transition, a very firm transition plan in place, and they need to talk about what this company is going to do for the workers, what's going to happen to pensions and severance and families. I'd like to know, are they going to compensate the Employment Insurance Fund? And I'd also like to know what plans General Motors has to clean up that site. It's a 100-year-old industrial site, and there's got to be a whole lot of environmental issues there. And hold their feet to the fire. In this transition plan, I want to see everyone involved. I want to see the mayor of Oshawa involved, the community involved, the union involved, and this company. And I want to see plans on the table to transform this plant. Okay, they're not selling cars out of Oshawa because nobody's buying them. Well, find a car that people will buy. We're in a climate change crisis, and we need cars that people will buy that are environmentally friendly.
Do you think, though, that the government, Ms. Matheson, should be making that pitch, or, as Minister Baines described, sort of waiting for GM to articulate what it wants and what it needs?
Well, they've been waiting for GM to articulate since 2009, and they got skinned. And I think it's high time that this government took some initiative. What is wrong with being demanding about the tariffs on automobiles? What is difficult about demanding there be a dismissal of the tariffs on steel and aluminum? This government has sat back and listened and been oh so lovely to General Motors. It's time to be tough, it's time to take leadership, and it's time to look after the community of Oshawa and those families that are depending on those jobs. This, as he pointed out, as the minister pointed out, is a great country. We have great manufacturing history and capacity, a trained workforce. Let's put that to use. Let's use that as an important part of the discussion instead of letting General Motors lead the discussion. I think it's our turn. I think it's the workers' turn.
Mr. O'Toole, when you talk about the general concerns around competitiveness, I mean, GM did close plants south of the border as well. So is it really a Canadian problem? Is it an issue with competitiveness here in Canada, or is it just that they made a business decision and their stocks have shown that it was sounds like a solid one from their point of view, not obviously from the workers' point of view, but is it just that they made this decision and it was the best decision from their point of view, not really specifically a sort of reaction to the level of competitiveness here in Canada?
Well, historically, the Oshawa facility and its workers have been amongst the most productive in the whole inventory of GM plants. So what has changed? And Vashi, you showed the flexibility that plant offers. It's able now to manufacture trucks, which are selling like hotcakes in the United States, as well as sedans. It's a competitive site. We do know, however, though, that the steel tariffs, the steel stamping in Oshawa has been impacted. The retaliatory tariffs that Canada's imposing is impacting their supply chain costs. We know they were going to opt GM Oshawa out of the national carbon tax plan, but they've increased payroll taxes. We've seen labor pressures from the Wynne government. There's been a whole range of challenges that plant's been facing. And I think if we address some of them, we go back to having the most productive, most well-trained, effective workforce. The Minister Baines has been lobbied a lot. Industry ministers always have been. The most common group speaking with him over the last couple of years has been GM. What have they been talking about? I would bet it's tariffs, it's NAFTA and trade, it's probably taxation. Let's address some of those things. We said today to the Prime Minister, we will work with you. Let's not turn the page a few hours after this announcement, because I'll tell you, in my community, it has been a century, not on the one site, but with the McLaughlin Carriage Works right through to GM. GM as a global company would not have been established were it not for the operations in Oshawa. So let's not turn the page within hours, let's fight for it.
Mr. O'Toole, though, is it realistic, I guess, to think that if those issues that you talk about, let's say, were amended, were addressed, GM might change their mind, given the fact that that south of the border they've also closed plants?
Yes, it makes full sense. We actually have a bit of an advantage competitively because of our dollar differential. Our healthcare system, particularly the move of healthcare systems into biologic drugs and a number of things, that provides another competitive advantage. And as I said, the men and women of our workforce have been the most productive historically. It's a flexible plant, so even if we could keep it on as a peak production plant, allowing GM to quickly retool to have more vehicles, more trucks, I think there's the ability, if we address some of the competitive concerns, maybe GM didn't ask for it because they didn't see a signal from this government, but they will see the Conservatives working alongside a plan if the Prime Minister and the Minister brings one forward.
Ms. Matheson, final word to you. When you talk about a transition plan involving the workers, what specifically would you like to see from the government? Doug Ford, for example, has asked for extending EI benefits by 5 weeks. What do you think?
Well, I think that it's very important to make this company support its workers. So I want to see pension protection. I want to see wage protection. I want to know exactly what it is this company, who has made billions of dollars and been profoundly successful on the backs of these workers and their families. I want to see them pony up and be held responsible. I think that there's more in terms of cards in this particular game than the minister is letting on. I want to see him play those cards, and I want him to do it with not just integrity, but I want him to be tough about this. This is a very, very difficult time, and let's use our advantages in terms of our workforce, our healthcare system, and the fact that we do very good work here in this country.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much to both of you. Thanks to Aaron O'Toole and Irene Matheson.
Thank you.